At that time, it was obvious that they were satisfied with her. Lin Zilei frowned. How could he have found someone more suitable? Thinking like that, Lin Zilei was not difficult to accept. Evening. Tang Junbai went home and went into the office, seemingly to handle work. In the afternoon, Lin Zilei heard about the dishes that Tang Junbai liked to eat from Wang's mother, and she personally prepared dinner. Ma Wang smiled and said, "This is what a wife should do." Lin Zilei bowed her head and smiled. If it wasn't for the need for help, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to win his heart. Ma Wang sighed. The boss died very early. The boss married his second wife, so the boss rarely comes home. Don't see him cold, in fact, he is very affectionate. Lin Zilei didn't speak either, just listened silently. That Miss Qin saved the master when she was a child, and later she always followed him when she grew up. In the past, the boss didn't like her either, but since returning from that business trip, he has changed his attitude. There is something you don't pay attention to after all. You are the official master. Ma Wang's cheek patted her shoulder comfortingly. Lin Zilei lowered her head and smiled bitterly. Who are you good to? She really can't say anything. Although it is a husband and wife relationship, the two are extremely strange. She understood this marriage very well. Lin Zilei glanced at the office, thinking of the black coffee Qin Lujie made this morning, so he asked, "Ma Wang, where are the coffee beans? I want to make it for him to drink." When Ma Wang heard this, she felt that she had noticed him, so she took the coffee beans and handed them to her and said, "There is no need for sugar and milk. The boss doesn't like sweets." Lin Zilei nodded, quickly made coffee, then poured it into the exquisite cup, and personally brought it. Tang Junbai was in the office on the phone. His expression was obviously a little impatient. What kind of business is the Human Resources Department? Is it so difficult to hire an interpreter? I know a lot of languages, but I really don't know Korea, because this language is not very common. Moreover, this category has just developed. There are a lot of things that need to be handled. If you don't know the language, how do you tell me to handle it? Tell the director of the Human Resources Department. I'll give him a day. If you still haven't found someone, tell him to wrap up his resignation package. Tang Junbai was angry, and suddenly heard a knock on the door, and he didn't suppress it, but said in a cold voice, "Come in." Lin Zilei's heart fluttered. Are you frustrated? But when he knocked on the door, even if he was annoyed, he had to persist in entering. Lin Zilei tried to smile. "I'll make you coffee." Tang Junbai looked up at her face and then slowly moved down to the coffee cup in her hand, slightly narrowed his eyes, and avoided him like a snake this morning. "Now you take the initiative to bring coffee to you? Ha, this woman changes so fast." Tang Junbai threw down the phone and sat on the chair, quietly watching her act. He wanted to see what this woman wanted to do. "I don't know, does it suit your taste?" Lin Zilei put the coffee on the table. Tang Junbai didn't move. He relaxed, lazily leaning on the chair. Lin Zilei flattered, "Can you taste it?" Tang Junbai frowned. It was clear in her heart that she had changed like this. Maybe there was a reason. He sarcastically, "Suddenly you want to ask me about the land of Fairy Bay?" Lin Zilei was stunned. She didn't think he would think of this so quickly. Suddenly, Tang Junbai grabbed Lin Zilei's chin tightly. "This is the reason why, even if I'm a lame boy, the Lin family has to marry you?" He held it so tightly, which made Lin Zilei feel extremely painful. She opened her mouth to explain. But how to explain? Say you are an abandoned child? Do you believe it? I don't. Get out. Tang Junbai pushed her away. Lin Zilei was thrown out unexpectedly. His arm accidentally hit the coffee cup. The black liquid soaked the papers on the table, and Tang Junbai's expression completely sank. Lin Zilei didn't expect it to turn out like this. She hurriedly wiped it away. Tang Junbai took out the papers and shouted extremely coldly, "Tell you to go out, didn't you hear?" He hated the people who leaned on it. Lin Zilei could only go out. "Wait, take these things out." Tang Junbai looked at it and was troubled. Lin Zilei took out his coffee cup. When it was time for dinner, Tang Junbai returned to his room. After eating, Lin Zilei sighed quietly. This person is so bad. It's a little difficult to get close. Let alone getting a piece of land, fighting for Lin Yuanzhong's right to take the initiative. Lin Zilei took a shower and then lay on the bed. She rolled over and still couldn't sleep, so she got out of bed. Thinking of giving coffee to Tang Junbai to wet the papers, she felt a little guilty in her heart. She wanted to make amends, so she went to his office. She turned on the light. The wet paper was still lying on the table. At that time she noticed that the document was the word of country A. The place where the coffee was wet. There were some places that were almost impossible to see clearly. She looked for new paper and hand-copied the words on it. Lin Zilei knew the country's literacy. Its popularity was not wide. It was considered to be an apology, so she translated it into Chinese for him to read. It was 3 o'clock in the morning when the document was translated, and the handwriting was finished. She let go of the pen, rubbed her sore wrist, and arranged it in order, and then put it on the new table to go to the bedroom. When Tang Jinbai woke up for breakfast, Lin Zilei still hadn't woken up. She slept too late last night. Moreover, she was pregnant, so she liked to sleep quite well, and she couldn't get up in the morning. Tang Jinbai frowned. She hasn't woken up yet? Ma Wang's eyes drooped. Not yet. You two are husband and wife. Why would you ask outsiders about me? Why can't Tang Jinbai hear what Wang's mother means? Stop leaving. Tang Jinbai was not good at explaining, even if Wang's mother was the one who took care of him from childhood to adulthood. Boss, I know you don't have feelings for Miss Lin, but when the mistress was still alive, she planned to marry you, and I see that she also cares about you very much. Yesterday afternoon she asked what you like to eat. The dishes she cooked last night were all cooked by her. And she even made your own coffee. Didn't she suddenly win her heart because she wanted to take the land of Tian Tui Bay for the Lin family? Interested in you? Tang Jinbai felt ridiculous. He turned his head to look at Wang's mother. Don't let her appearance fool you. What kind of person are you? You're the one who knows best. Thinking of the papers that were wet with coffee last night, he went into his office and had to bring a copy to the company for the person to reprint. As soon as he entered the door, Tang Jinbai discovered that his desk had been touched by someone. This place has never been in this place except for Wang's mother, Guangjing, and even Qin Lu Jia. Who is it? That woman sneaked into his office? He walked to the front of the table, found that there was a handwritten translation document on the table, and when he picked it up, he saw that it was a neat and very straightforward line. Tang Jinbai frowned. Did the other woman write? Do you know the language of country? He was somewhat incredulous. When he was about to put it down, wanting to ask the other woman for clarification, a note fell out of the file on which was written, Sorry that I didn't have your consent to enter your office by myself. It was only last night that I made your documents wet, so I want to try my best to help him fix it. The language of country is not easy to learn. I translated it myself into Chinese for his convenience, as compensation for wetting his documents. Lin Zilei squeezed the notepad, looked at the translated and handwritten document again, and the anger that she entered his office on her own had subsided a little. He looked at the delicate handwriting, and suddenly felt a little curious about her. Unexpectedly, she knew this little-known language. Tang Jinbai put down the note and took the document to the company. When Lin Zilei woke up at noon, Wang's mother had prepared food for her, which made her a little embarrassed because she woke up too late. Ma Wang smiled. Normally it's very lonely here. The boss never sleeps since you entered. This place seems to have gained more vitality. Lin Zilei smiled and said, Miss Qin didn't come often before? Ma Wang's expression stiffened for a moment. Are you jealous? Lin Zilei really didn't mean anything else. She just asked casually. And when she finished asking, she regretted it. I don't come often. The boss used to be cold to her. Ma Wang also felt strange. Why did he change his attitude towards her on a business trip? How many years have you not loved? Why have you been in love for a few days? Ma Wang couldn't think about it for a long time. Lin Zilei thought, they all said that women's thoughts are difficult to detect, and so are men's thoughts, especially a man like Tang Jinbai. That job is considered finished. Lin Zilei also doesn't want to continue to play in her spare time. She has to find a stable job, and for the time being her mother's things definitely can't be retrieved. There is not much money left in her hands. She does not use it here, but on her mother's side she has to use it. After eating she went out. People who don't have a degree, don't have work experience like her, it's really hard to find a job. After encountering difficulties on all sides, Lin Zilei only had to find a few low-level jobs. CA high-end restaurant is hiring employees. This profession does not need a degree, as long as she is agile enough and reacts quickly. Now she has to make sure she has money in her hand and go to apply. Lin Zilei just hasn't gotten a degree yet, but she has also gone to college. Her words and gestures are very logical, and her reactions are also fast. The restaurant manager said she could come to work tomorrow. After all, there was a job. Lin Zilei's mood was a little better, and she walked alone on the side of the road when she came out of the restaurant. The sun turned to the west. The evil sun left a red streak at the end of the horizon, and the bright red light shone down on the road that stretched Lin Zilei's figure. Zilei. Hearing the call, Lin Zilei turned his head and saw He Xiantian running from the opposite side of the road. I thought I was dizzy. He laughed. Dr. He. Lin Zilei was also surprised to see him again. Why are you still in the country? He looked at Lin Zilei, wanting to say it again. I'm back here to work. Lin Zilei thought about that day in the hospital, and the director had personally invited him back, and he understood in his heart. That hospital treats you very well, isn't it? Lin Zilei was somewhat admiring. Because she took care of her mother, she still hadn't gotten a diploma, and now it's really hard to find a job. He Xiantian smiled mildly. It's not bad. If it weren't for her not coming back, even if the treatment was better, he wouldn't have chosen to stay in the country. There were too many people in the country, and it was something he didn't want to remember. Lin Zilei raised her head and looked at the sky. It was almost dark again, and she had been back for nearly 2 months. Now she had some ambiguity and didn't know what to do. If you want to win back what belongs to you, it's easy to say. He Xiantian felt her emotions, and reached out to pull her messy hair behind her ears. If you have any difficulties, tell me. He had helped her a lot before. Lin Zilei smiled and shook his head. The time spent with her was not short. He also knew a little bit of this little girl's thoughts, and he would rather suffer than owe someone else. You're too hard. It was so strong that it hurt others. Lin Zilei pursed her lips. Not that she didn't want to be in debt, but that she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to pay it. She was poor. It's getting dark. Isn't Dr. He coming home? Lin Zilei asked. In the past, Lin Zilei had always called him that, always called him Dr. He. Lap lap. He Xiantian looked at her. Don't call me Dr. He anymore in the future? He looked at Lin Zilei seriously. It's okay to call him by name or brother, we've known each other for so long. And I've been calling you Dr. He all the time, it's too far away, what do you think? Lin Zilei pondered. He was older than her. The other one also took care of her like a brother. Then let's call her brother? Yes. He Xiantian took this opportunity to get closer to her, stretched out his hand to hug her and smiled softly. Call your brother later. Bye, that's Miss Lin, right? Tong Jinbai drove without paying attention to the person on the side of the road. Qin Lujie said that. Then he looked at this side. Lin Zilei was stiff. She couldn't expect He Xiantian to hug her. Waiting until she regained her spirits, she stretched out. From Tong Jinbai's perspective, there were some parts of it. He couldn't help frowning. Qin Lujie seemed to say unintentionally, I didn't expect her to have a boyfriend. Tong Jinbai was incomprehensible. He stepped on the accelerator as far as he could, speeding on the road. Qin Lujie pursed his lips. Are you angry? Tong Jinbai sneered. Why are you angry? If you are pregnant, there must be a man. Knowing that she had a man was not the same as what she felt when she saw it. It was really extremely uncomfortable. The car quickly stopped at Qin Lujie's place. She didn't get out of the car right away, but looked at Tong Jinbai. Aren't you going to sit down for a while? Seemingly afraid that he would refuse, Qin Lujie hurriedly added a sentence. Bye, I have prepared the food you like. Lujie. Tong Jinbai interrupted her. He didn't know what he was doing anymore. His mind was a little confused, and he reached out to stroke her hair. I'm not going up today, you should rest early. But, in the end, Qin Lujie still didn't speak, and obediently got out of the car. You drive a little slowly. Tong Jinbai said yes softly and drove away. He almost used the fastest speed to go home, but when he arrived, Lin Zilei still hadn't returned. He unbuttoned his shirt. When did she go out? Noon. Ma Wang grabbed his coat. Do you always eat now? Wait a minute. Now he doesn't want to eat. The buttons of his shirt were unbuttoned, obviously not tight, but he felt frustrated. This strange feeling made him very uncomfortable. He pushed open the door of the office. The note Lin Zilei left for him was still on the table. He picked it up and smiled sarcastically. Acting out the humiliation in front of me, going back and forth with another man, Lin Zilei, you're quite good. The paper in his hand was folded into a circle. Lin Zilei called a car to go home. Xiantian wanted to take her home, but she didn't want to let him know about her relationship with Tang Xunbai, so she refused. There was only Wang's mother in the house. Lin Zilei thought that Tang Xunbai had not returned yet, and his mood was also relaxed. Ma Wang saw that Lin Zilei was in a good mood and asked, "Is there anything funny?" "Actually no," Lin Zilei smiled. "It's just that I feel that he's not here. I'll be more natural." "Ma Wang, you mean I'm a superfluous person?" His elongated figure lazily leaned against the door of the office, indifferent and sarcastic. This voice. Lin Zilei stiffly turned around and saw the man leaning against the door, his expression heavy. "Brother, why are you at home?" When she came home she didn't see him, so Lin Zilei instinctively thought that he hadn't come back, so she said not to think too much. Lin Zilei was just about to explain when Tang Xunbai passed her into the dining room and called Wang's mother to eat. Lin Zilei sat in front of the table, opening his mouth several times to explain, but he couldn't find a reason to quit. Tang Xunbai didn't look at her once. It was just that when he finished eating he said, "You come in with me." Lin Zilei let go of his chopsticks and followed him into the office. Tang Xunbai sat in front of the desk, put the document she had translated on the table, and glanced at her indifferently. "Do you know the language of the country?" Lin Zilei nodded casually. On the contrary, Tang Xunbai felt strange. "Why do you learn this language? It's not common internationally." Speaking of the place where she had lived for 8 years, there was too much pain in her heart. It's just that no one can experience these pains, only she knows the struggles and difficulties of that time. She didn't want to show it in front of outsiders. She tried to smile and seemed very relieved. "If you like it, let's study." Tang Xunbai frowned. Looking at her, she seemed to be very good at hiding her emotions. The pain at the bottom of her eyes quickly disappeared, but it didn't pass through his eyes. What was she hiding after all? "You're here." He lowered his voice. Lin Zilei's heart resisted. She couldn't guess this man. But now she couldn't help but communicate with him. Gently walked closer. Tang Xunbai put the document in front of her. "If you already know, please translate this document for me." Lin Zilei lowered her head and found that in the right corner of the document was printed with the words Tan Hung Group. Last night, she was just busy translating without paying attention to the text printed on this right corner. She couldn't help but raise her head. "You haven't recruited an interpreter yet?" Tang Xunbai raised his eyebrows. Lin Zilei held the document and said in a low voice, "I went to your company to apply for an interpreter. At first they were very satisfied with me, and then they didn't know why they said I was not suitable." Is there such a thing? Every word of his, every expression on his face made people awake, hiding the meaning of others that others could not guess. Lin Zilei said, for a while she didn't need to lie. "I can help you translate this document, but..." Lin Zilei is not bottomless greed. She wants to get some benefits from this. It's just that now she has empty hands. She can only not measure her strength. Tang Xunbai, even though he was busy, still looked at her, and without waiting for her to speak, he interrupted. "If you want to talk about the land of Fairy Bay, I can't agree, Lin Shi, you are not qualified." Just now, it was true that Lin Zilei wanted to talk about this, but he didn't give it to Lin Yuanzhong, but he wanted him to give it to her so that she would have a card to bet and negotiate a transaction with Lin Yuanzhong. Now he refuses again. An interpreter in exchange for a piece of land is obviously impossible. "Then you give me the money. If I can't get my mother's dowry now, then earn a little money first to ensure her mother's life. And after giving birth, she needs to earn a lot of money to take care of her life." Lin Zilei flipped through the document. There were more than 20 pages. 300,000 on one side. "I don't ask you for a high price." Tang Xunbai. Is the Lin family so short of money? Why did her work make him more and more unable to see through? Tang Xunbai didn't say anything. Lin Zilei thought that he didn't agree. "It's really not expensive. If you find it expensive, I reduce a little?" "No need, just do as you say." "That's fine." Lin Zilei picked up the document and stood up. "I can't finish it right away, so I'll take it back to my room, and when it's finished, I'll bring it to you." "Wait. Huh?" Lin Zilei looked at him suspiciously. His eyes were heavy as if warning. "I hope you understand something." "What's the matter?" Lin Zilei was confused. Tang Xunbai got up from his job. He walked against the light. His steps were very slow and leisurely, and finally stood in front of Lin Zilei, and then looked down from above. When you are still in a relationship with me, don't arbitrarily associate your brothers and sisters with another man. No matter what the reason for getting married, when that marriage still exists, she absolutely must not cuckold him. This is his bottom line. And it is also the honor of a man. It took a long time for Lin Zilei to react. Who was she intimate with? She instinctively retorted. Didn't you also spend the night with another girl in this place? Shouldn't I also use your status as a wife to make a request to you? Tang Junbai furrowed his eyebrows even tighter. I didn't sleep with her. Lin Zilei was a little stunned. It was obvious that Qin Lujia also spent the night here last night. Not sleeping together, who can believe it? Wait, whether you sleep or not, what does it have to do with you? Tang Junbai's face changed a few times. What are you doing? Lin Zilei didn't want to continue arguing with him, so he spoke softer. I will also try my best to do what you ask, so I. She shook the document in her hand. Her meaning was very clear. Tang Junbai said casually. His voice carried a hint of anger. He was not angry with Lin Zilei, but he was angry with himself. What's wrong with him? Why did he suddenly have to explain to her? It's really crazy. This unusual behavior made him feel very unfamiliar, even offensive. Because Lin Zilei had already been accepted to work in the restaurant, she wanted to quickly complete the translation of these documents. By 12 o'clock at night, she was only halfway done, but she was already very tired. Because she wanted to be more alert, she took the pile of documents out of the living room. The whole villa was very quiet at this time. Perhaps Tang Junbai and Ma Wang had fallen asleep. She put the pile of documents on the table to drink water, then went to the kitchen to pour herself a cup of warm water. After drinking, she returned to the living room and sat down on the carpet, and then crawled to the table to drink water to continue translating. In the middle of the night, Tang Junbai was thirsty, so he went downstairs to drink water, and when he saw Lin Zilei still translating documents, his eyebrows furrowed slightly. But he didn't speak. Lin Zilei also spotted him, so he didn't take the initiative to greet him. Tang Junbai was used to having no outsiders in the house, so when he saw the glass of water on the table, he picked it up and drank it immediately. That. Lin Zilei wanted to remind him, that cup was the cup she had just used, but before she could speak, Tang Junbai had already finished drinking, and the rest of the words were not spoken. She didn't know how to say it next. Tang Junbai looked at her, seemingly understanding that she had something difficult to say. His gaze stopped on her face for a few seconds, then suddenly he lowered his head, thanks to the twinkling light, and he discovered that on the mouth of the cup there was half a lipstick crocodile stuck to it. The other half was exactly the place where he had just drunk. Seeing this, he immediately understood that the place where he had just put his lips to drink water, someone had used it. Combined with Lin Zilei's reaction just now, he guessed in his heart that it must be her. Lin Zilei lowered his head, pretending not to notice anything, and nothing had just happened. But for some reason her face was a little hot. They weren't familiar at all, and they shared the same cup, and that behavior was too intimate. Although he said that he was just accidental, Lin Zilei still felt as embarrassed as before. Tang Junbai twitched the corners of his lips slightly. The tip of his tongue gently slipped through his lower lip. He himself didn't know what he was thinking, but he decisively drank all the rest of the water. He put down the empty cup, and then walked over to look at the clock. It was already an hour. Haven't you slept yet? Lin Zilei lowered his face, not daring to raise his head. I'm not sleepy yet. Tang Junbai looked at her silently for 2 seconds, then turned and walked upstairs. When he reached the top of the stairs, he suddenly thought that he had gone to the company for an interview, but he was not accepted, which made him feel very strange. So when he got to his room, he picked up the phone and called Kwang Kin. In the middle of the night, Kwang Jing was sleeping dreamily. When he was woken up by the sound of the phone ringing, he was in a very bad mood at that time. He picked up the phone at the head of the bed with anger. In his heart he had already prepared a few scoldings, but when he saw the name displayed on the phone screen in the blink of an eye, he was frightened, hurriedly rubbed his eyes and then answered the phone. General Director Tong. You go to investigate a little. Why did the Human Resources Department refuse someone to interview for the interpreter position? Kwang Kin still didn't understand what had happened, when the other end had already hung up the phone. He stared at the phone. It was already past midnight, and yet he called because of such a small matter? Kwang Kin's face was about to grimacing. Isn't this disturbing people's beautiful dreams? Even he himself had to grumble, but did not dare to delay. The next day when Mama Wang woke up, she saw Lin Zilei falling asleep on the drinking table. There was still a pile of documents in front of her. She didn't understand, but she knew that this was a matter of work, and she said softly in her heart, "Don't you have to risk your life to work like that? I don't sleep well." Although she didn't understand, Ma Wang still went into the room and took a thin blanket to cover her. At this moment, Tong Zhenbai also came downstairs. He saw Wang's mother covering Lin Zilei with a blanket, and the wrinkles on his eyes suddenly deepened more, and his demeanor deteriorated over the years. He walked to the side, bent down and picked up the pile of documents she was translating. 22 pages of documents, but only she has finished translating. After doing all the work, I'm just afraid it's morning. This girl has been up all night without sleeping? Tong Zhenbai couldn't help but look at her one more time. Ma Wang sighed. She didn't know what to say now. So she turned around and went into the kitchen to prepare breakfast. When Lin Zilei woke up, Tong Zhenbai was eating breakfast. She rubbed her eyes, her hands on the table to get up, but her legs were already numb. It took a long time for her to walk again. She went to the bathroom to wash her face, and by the way she took a shower, making herself more alert. After Lin Zilei finished changing her clothes and went out, she pushed the pile of translated documents in front of Tong Zhenbai. It's done. Then she returned to her place to sit down to eat. Then she thought for a moment and said, "If you can give me the money." Lin Zilei was afraid that he would forget about this. Tong Zhenbai put down the coffee cup, and then looked at her for 2 seconds. "I don't have the habit of carrying cash. You came to the company to find me tonight." After speaking, he stood up immediately. Lin Zilei took a sip of cow's milk. She didn't think much about it. After all, he had already accepted this debt. Lin Zilei risked her life to finish translating all such documents, because she didn't want to affect her work today. Not long after Tong Zhenbai went out, Lin Zilei also walked out the door. The staff in the restaurant all had to wear uniforms, so did Lin Zilei. She wore a white shirt, a black waistcoat on the outside, a butterfly-shaped bow tie on the collar, and a short skirt that only covered her buttocks, revealing her long, straight, small legs. In the position near the window, Qin Lujie's mood was very good today, because Tong Zhenbai took the initiative to invite her out to eat. Although Tong Zhenbai had admitted the relationship between the two, he had also said that he would marry her, but he had never taken the initiative to date her before. Almost all of them were taken by her. "Bye. I heard that the time Lin Zilei came to the company to interview for the position of interpreter, was it because you failed her?" Early in the morning when he had just arrived at the company, Kwang Kin told him. This interview was made difficult by Qin Lujian's side. Qin Lujie's hands clenched very quickly. How did he know this? Tong Zhenbai leaned back against the side of the chair. The sun outside the window was very warm, shining on him. He lazily propped up his chin, and in his deep eyes there was a contemplative look. For this girl who had saved him as a child, he had always considered her a very honest girl, but at this time he didn't know it well. Qin Lujie tried to suppress the confusion in her heart. She lowered her head slightly, and there was a little steam in her eyes. "She and I were together early in the afternoon. If I go to the company to work as an interpreter again, I will be even closer to you, so I'm afraid that the two of you will be together for a long time will arise feelings." If she couldn't hide it, then she definitely wouldn't hide it anymore. Moreover, she frankly made it clear, in order to eliminate Tong Zhenbai's suspicions, wanting to tell him that she was doing so because she was afraid of losing him. Her big round eyes were full of tears. "I don't know you for a day or two, and I understand your feelings for me." Qin Lujie continued to choke. "I was very afraid of losing you, so when I saw her coming to the interview company to do as I please." Tong Zhenbai furrowed his brows. "I told you before, in a month we will get divorced." Qin Lujie understood it well. If she didn't know that Lin Zilei was the girl that night, then she would have been willing to wait. She had waited for so many years, and she didn't care about waiting for another month, but now she couldn't wait anymore. She absolutely couldn't let Lin Zile be near Tong Zhenbai. Impossible. "Lin Zilei, this is the food of table number 2. You carry it over there." Lin Zilei replied for a while. I don't know if it was because she didn't sleep well last night, but when she went to work today, when she got up, she felt a slight sharp pain in her lower abdomen. She carried the tray towards table number 2, and before she could even arrive, Lin Zilei saw Qin Lujia, who was sitting across from her. She didn't need to think about who it was. Her legs hesitated a little, but it was very short. This was her job, she couldn't avoid it. She tried to keep the standard smile on her face. "These are the dishes you ordered." Lin Zilei bent over and carried the food inside the tray out. When she put the plate of food in front of Tang Xinbai, her wrist was suddenly clenched. "What are you doing?" His voice was very cold, carrying a questioning look. His eyes were looking at her, a white shirt, a black waistcoat, a short skirt that only covered her buttocks to reveal her straight white legs. His gaze stopped on her legs for a few seconds, and his expression became even more gloomy. "She also wears makeup. Who do you want to put on makeup? You are a married girl, what are you doing here?" Lin Zilei's face still maintained a smiling look from beginning to end. "I'm working." Tang Xinbai's eyebrows on his face showed a glimpse of anger. Yesterday the interpreter of the document asked for his money, and now he is doing this job. Has the Lin family really failed to this extent? "Can you please let me go?" Lin Zilei didn't feel that there was anything wrong with her making money based on her hands. Qin Lujia grabbed Tang Xinbai's hand. "By many people are watching, what's the matter? Let's go out and talk." The marriage between Tang Xinbai and Lin Zilei is unknown, and Qin Lujia doesn't want Tang Xinbai to reveal this. Tang Xinbai stared at Lin Zilei, and after a long time he suppressed this nameless anger, and then let go of her hand. "I don't want you to work here." At that time, Lin Zilei felt that her lower abdomen suddenly felt severe pain. Her forehead was covered with sweat that she hadn't even realized. She wanted to explain, but her strength was not enough to try anymore, so she didn't speak up and took the tray away. After putting down the dishes, she went into the toilet. This painful feeling made her very scared. Fortunately, she didn't see the red. After stepping out of the bathroom while standing at the sink, she lowered her head to her stomach. "Baby, be a little obedient. You have to earn money, you have money, then you can take good care of yourself and the pet in your belly." At the same time, Qin Lujia walked over. Just when she heard that sentence, her eyes looked directly at her stomach, and her face couldn't help but turn white. Lin Zilei saw that her face was pale and explained, "It's not Tang Xinbai's, don't show such an unsightly face." After speaking, Lin Zilei recovered his spirits, glanced past her, and walked out of the toilet. "Your child, it's been 2 months?" Qin Lujia turned around and asked. Lin Zilei also stopped and turned his head when he heard that. "How do you know?" I looked at your belly and guessed." Qin Lujia tried to restrain himself. And yet she was pregnant? Is it Tang Xinbai's? Sure enough, it was impossible to keep this girl anymore. At this moment, Qin Lujia was frantically thinking of a way to exterminate this girl, causing her to completely disappear from Tang Xinbai's world. Lin Zilei had just gone outside the toilet and was grabbed by Tang Xinbai's wrist and dragged out of the restaurant. Originally she was uncomfortable, but she was forcibly dragged away by Tang Xinbai, making her feel that the pain that had just subsided was now even more painful. "You let me go." Originally she was going to shout loudly, but she still didn't have enough strength, so her spirit was weakened. Tang Xinbai dragged her straight out to the side of the road, and then let her go. He said sternly, "If you lack money, you can tell me directly. You don't need to pretend to be pitiful in front of me like that." He didn't believe it. The Lin family's house had gone downhill to such an extent. 2 days ago Lin Yuanzhong even took his wife and daughter to eat at a luxurious restaurant, but at this time she came to the house to work as a waiter. Lin Zilei had to rely on the billboard on the side of the road. Otherwise she wouldn't be able to bear it. She tried to keep herself sober. "Although Mr. Tong and I are husband and wife, you and I both understand, between us is nothing more than a transaction, trading according to demand. No matter what I do, Mr. Tong doesn't need to be so angry. You are already my wife, and doing a job like this is to make me lose face." For this girl, Tang Xinbai was always dry. He understood her well, and her behavior made others incomprehensible. Lin Zilei smirked, silently enduring the pain. Just when she was about to lose her bearing it anymore, Xintian rushed to this side. "Zilei, I came here to look for you, but I didn't expect it to be really. Are you uncomfortable?" As a psychiatrist, he observed every little expression of others very carefully. Although Lin Zilei tried his best to suppress it, but he still realized that she was not well. Since the day he said goodbye to her, he had gone to her place to find Zhang Jiyue, and from Zhang Jiyue's mouth he knew everything about Lin Zilei. including how she had a baby in her womb. In his heart, there was a feeling that was very difficult to describe, but in short, it was not pleasant. She encountered such a difficulty. Why didn't she come to find him? He thought of her, but he didn't know where she was, so he went to the place where the two of them met the other day to try their luck, not expecting that he had actually found her. Now Lindsay Lei didn't notice anything. The pain in her lower abdomen made her panic. She stretched out her hand and grabbed He Xuantian's arm. "Trouble me, take me to the hospital for a trip." He Cho Tian glanced at her lower abdomen, and when he bent down to carry her, his shoulders suddenly felt heavy. He turned his head. Then he saw Tang Zhenbai with a gloomy face. "She is my wife." The voice was neither heavy nor light, but it made others extremely frightened. "It's like warning it's his wife, others can't touch it." He Xiantian smiled, and the smile was very sarcastic. "Are you two husband and wife?" Without waiting for Tang Zhenbai to react, he continued. "It's just a transaction between the two of you. You won't marry a pregnant girl." Tang Zhenbai narrowed his eyes and a dangerous breath rose to his face. "That baby is yours?"